Greetings and welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. Very glad to be here with you. I have two guests for what I think is going to be a very intriguing and interesting program. We're going to be talking a lot about USOs, that is unidentified submersible objects, but also just good old-fashioned UFOs or UAP as well. I'm here with an old friend of mine, Darcy Ware, filmmaker, who every time I turn around, Darcy, you make another film and I bring you on. And not only that, but every time I turn around, you make another film that has me in it. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that film, and we'll bring you on here because they're interesting. I love your work, and I'm very glad to be part of it. And we also have another guest, Andy Marcial, who is also like myself featured in this documentary, which is called I had it. Transmedium is the name of it. Is that
Fast
right?
movers and USOs. Yeah. Transmedium fast movers and USOs. So, of
Thank you.
course,
Well, welcome both. And I didn't read your bios, but maybe we'll get into that as we go along. I'm sorry about that, gentlemen.
oh, don't worry about it. For me, people probably know me by now that I have been documenting various different aspects of UFO reality over the years. And
You've been going at full speed ahead. I mean, you did several on Secret Space. You've done a bunch. You've had James Goodall, who I love. You've had in a bunch of your programs. Um, I mean, I honestly I can't even keep up, and I've known them all too. So, but anyway, so yeah, you've got this one.
yeah, this one we're just focusing on the USO phenomenon and the transmedium the word transmedium kind of started only really popping up in the last few years, Rich?
I
Like
think
since
so.
the
Yeah,
debrief article, um,
that's
where
right.
these two senior Navy officials were communicating via email about UAPs exhibiting transmedium capabilities, meaning these objects go from our atmosphere to the ocean unimpeded with friction and typical forces that water would exude on a craft. Um, you would definitely get some slowdown, but these things just zoom right through the ocean and keep going on their merry ways. So, pretty interesting phenomenon. And I started speaking to people about it in this documentary. And, I brought Andy on at the end to just discuss, some other aspects of UAP history that's happened recently with DHS, Department of Homeland Security, video leaks through an agent that he was contacted by, and just you know what happens when somebody leaks videos these days. They usually get kind of debunked, attacked. Mick West came after him, a bunch of other
Yeah.
OGs in the UFO field. But interestingly enough, eventually CBP and DHS released documentation saying, "Yep, these UFO videos were credible." So
Yeah, I think we want to get into that. Andy, I want to jump in with you in one second to talk about that. I just want people to know for this documentary, Darcy, you also had you featured Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who has been getting a lot of attention lately, and I thought his contribution was quite positive. You also had Mark D'Antonio, long time MUFON investigator and consultant. Mark's done a tremendous amount of analyses of UFO UAP video over the years, and he had his own um, very interesting USO account, something he has spoken about publicly from time to time. And you got some very good clips of him talking about that as well. And I think you had a few other guests. I'm trying to think, but
yeah,
then yes,
Chris
Chris
Stiles from the Shag
Styles. Yes.
Harbor incident. I think he might have reached out to you recently via email because you're working on your
Yes.
book about USOs, and the Shag Harbor incident's pretty prominent in that history.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
1967, and then his recent book, Clean Sweep or Clean Sweep 5, or
I have it on order. I'm hoping to get that any day.
yeah, which is about the Shelburne incident from 1960.
Yeah.
Both involved NATO, both supposedly involved non-human intelligence in the ocean. Really interesting stuff. And he's also a fellow Canadian from the East Coast. So
That's right.
pretty cool. But
Yeah, I didn't know
yeah,
about the Shelburne incident, so I'm really looking forward to reading what he's got on that.
yeah, it just shows that Canada and all of these Five Eyes sort of partners of the United States have a ton of information out there that's just hidden, I guess, not even really scratching the surface on what the United States has buried and classified, uh, you know, research and access, special access programs, I would say.
Could
But
not agree. Could not agree more.
I have a clip of Tim Gallaudet and I speaking. If you want me to bring him up, just to sort of illustrate something from the documentary.
I would love to, but I want to bring Andy in. This isn't a USO component, but Andy graciously and kindly agreed to participate in this interview. And I just want to greet you and say hi, Andy. Welcome to the program. And would you just care to give a little bit of background as to how you are in Darcy's film as well, and particularly the video that you were able to release to the public? Talk a little bit about the attacks you went through, what the video really portrays, and maybe Darcy, can you show a little bit of the video clip after Andy discusses it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you for having me, Dolan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh yeah. Oh, also, we both graduated from the same high school. We discovered.
Yeah.
Ah,
Which
exactly 20 years apart.
It's still blowing my mind, but yeah.
Brentwood, Long Island, people. If you don't know about it, you're
Crazy.
missing out. But anyway, yes, we were 20 years apart. Okay, go.
So anyway, thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure. I actually got into all this from personal experience. Started in Puerto Rico and more prominent ones here on Long Island. But basically, throughout the years, that kind of pushed me to do my own investigation with the phenomenon to figure out what it is that I experienced and why I saw it and what it was that I saw, which led me to start my Instagram account about, I would say maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, something like that.
Mhm.
And I kind of got tired of seeing all the crap that was being put out there, all the fake videos and information. So instead of complaining, decided to do something about it. So eventually, after doing what I did on Instagram, I was reached out to by an individual who had showed me some video cell phone clips of some footage he said he thought I might find interesting. So once I saw them, I was like, really like excited because I knew what I was seeing. And I didn't want to get too excited because, of course, I needed to vet that this individual was the real deal and I wasn't trying to be taken for a fool. So eventually, I did get all the information I needed. This person felt comfortable enough to give me everything from his social security number to his birth certificate to
Mhm.
prove who he was. And after getting enough verification, I realized, okay, this guy's the real deal. Um, Talked him into getting me the original files, which he was very hesitant to do at first because the ramifications of something like that or being caught, he wasn't sure what could happen. But eventually I convinced him and he took the chance of getting me the original files. And once I got them, realized what I had. It's the first, I mean, I've been doing my own research for myself. So I knew that what I had in my hands was very important. It's never happened in the history of ufology where something like this comes out in its original file. No,
Mhm.
government, hands clipping and cutting out information. It's all original. So what I did was before I released them, because I understood what I had reached out to the SCU and informed them of the footage.
Let's see,
And
Scientific Coalition of Ufology. They
yeah,
do very good work. So
yeah,
yeah,
they
UAP
did that.
studies, I think.
Yeah, they did the full analysis of the Aguadilla footage, if I'm not mistaken. It was the very first
that's right.
scientific analysis of UFO. Um, so once they saw the footage and vetted the individual as well, felt that it was good enough. I believe what they told me is that they used the Aguadilla footage as a basis of what like of how good a video needs to be in order for them to bother analyzing, I guess you
Mm.
could say. So once they realized that it was that good, I mean, you're talking it was 60 full minutes, which has never happened in any, video that's ever been leaked or come out of government or military or anything. With all the information, everything needed to do a proper analysis, and that was one of the reasons why they were very interested in doing it, and they ended up taking it and to but taking they brought it in, analyzed it, and eventually after the analysis came out, they concluded that the object was anomalous. And
We
that
have
was
the we
indeed.
have this clip, which, by the way, people will see this and they're going to recognize it, or at least parts of it, from the TMZ documentary from a few months ago, featuring Jeremy Corbell, called UFO Revolution, which was very a lot of people saw that, and that's the clip that you actually got, isn't that right?
Yes,
Yeah,
that was it.
but the version that you have has more of the metadata available, apparently.
Yeah, but it's actually a copy of the original file.
Yeah, yeah.
So everything was actually, but before it was released, the agent was nervous about it because of where it placed the plane when, or when these things were being filmed, because apparently they weren't supposed to be where they were, so that was a
Okay.
concern of the coordinates.
Ah,
But yeah, so we released it regardless, and
yeah.
once it was released, and even with the proper steps that I took, um, the the response was absolutely devastating because I was not expecting that. Like I'm not looking at it. I'm not here to make money. I'm not here for fame. I'm not here for any of that. I got what I got, and I knew what I had was important. Released it properly, trying to do the right thing with it. And once it came out, the attacks was just like it left a really bad taste in my mouth because it's like we're all trying we all claim to be fighting for the same cause, yet when people come out with information that help to get to that answer and that truth, we attack them and
Yes.
belittle them and berate them, and it was very disappointing.
Sorry to say, welcome to ufology. That happens to pretty much seriously, almost everyone who's got something legitimate and good to put out there. People come out throwing things at you, and that happened to you, unfortunately. But you're as part of a long tradition, to be perfectly honest. And now you've been dipped into it, and you're one of the crew now. So
Yeah,
welcome.
it's happened to me quite a bit over the years too. So
Yes, and all of us. So
I've
Darcy, do you have that
empathized.
clip? Can you
Yeah,
play
I do
some of that clip?
have. I can share that right now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
One quick second. So this is the rubber duck footage. Um, it's this object that looks kind of white, like two objects. It looks like sort of an orb
Yeah.
and then a bell-shaped
And this
thing on the
this was
bottom.
featured in the TMZ UFO Revolutions. I definitely remember that from there as well.
Yeah, they did not show the heads-up display information in that doc. They seemed to cover it up for some reason, but on this, you could see the altitude in the top left corner, the speed.
Is this
Uh,
actual video? It looks to me it says as if it's separate screenshots, unless I'm just not seeing it quite right.
this is the actual video.
Okay.
I'm just playing the are you seeing that, Andy?
Well, on our end, it's coming up in parts, not in full motion.
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay. So
well,
can you see my mouse moving or anything?
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the actual for maybe it's not fast enough to stream it because I'm actually just playing a YouTube clip here. But this is the heads up display. You've got the speed, miles per hour in the top right corner there, elevation and feet,
Yeah.
uh, altitude, the top left corner. And I believe, Andy, this was being recorded in black hot mode or white hot?
Black hot,
Black hot.
which means
So
that the object was emitting no zero heat.
Yeah, which is strange because if it was a drone or, some kind of balloon, there would be some kind of heat. And this is white, completely white, meaning there's no heat whatsoever, which is strange. But I actually have another clip. This other one might work a bit better. Let me see if I can. Can you see that?
No.
Cannot.
Oh, wait, here we go. Now we see something.
Now we can. Now we can.
Now you can? Okay. Are you seeing this real time?
No, I think, as I said, when we lost you for a second, I'm not running on my Ethernet, which is my mistake. I'm running on my Wi-Fi, and I'm wondering if that's causing the lag.
Well, we could just, some of the stills from this could work too. Do you see this? This is like
Yeah, we see this.
A10 Warhog to the right, and you've got this sort of like spherical object to the left.
Oh yeah.
So
see it very well.
Andy, this was the first footage that you were shared, right?
Yeah, actually, that's the first video I got through the cell phone recording. So that all three videos, when he had first brought them up to me and mentioned them to me, were kept in a folder labeled like like anomalous objects or something like that, and were passed around through different agents to try and identify what it was. And in this one in particular, I know you can't really see the video too well. It's coming up in clips, but that object at the beginning, first they were looking at the A10, and then that object came into view, and it garnered their attention where they began to focus in on it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, at one point, you could actually see the A10 and the object behind it catching up to it, which means that this object was traveling at anywhere between 300 to 400 miles per hour, because I believe the average cruising speed of an A10 is about 300, 350 or something like that miles per hour.
Yeah.
So that right there ruled out a bird or a balloon or anything. And the fact that they maintained focus on the object afterwards for some time kind of tells you, all right, if it was a bird or balloon, they're not going to waste their time observing it for so long.
Yeah.
And it would get their attention the way it did. So
I think they're really interesting clips. Were these done? Are you able to say where these were taken at? Is this in the Southwest U.S., Southwestern United States?
All three of them happened in Arizona, the Arizona border, I believe.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, there's always going to be a question as to, are these drones doing narco smuggling and things of that sort, I would imagine. But the thing is, actually, the signatures are odd on these things.
Yeah, so that was, for example, with the rubber duck, that was one of the things that people were trying to say it was, or either that or a parachute, with a bag of drugs or something like that. But Dave Fouch is a good friend of mine, 20-year FLIR technician. He did experiments for the SCU with different balloons, birds, mylar, latex, to show what it looks like with the exact same system. And he was not able to replicate it as to the exact way that the object in the footage was looking, which was one of the reasons why they used that to determine that the object was none of those things. Plus, if it was a drone, you would have seen the heat signatures, and in that object, you see zero heat signature.
Yeah, it's definitely very, very interesting, and that fits. There's the category of the 5 observables of the UAP, something that's fairly new, and Lou Elizondo's publicized this quite a bit. And one of the characteristics is low observability, and where the objects don't really have the kind of signature that you would expect, or in this case, a heat signature, or actually lack of signature is another of the characteristics. So. So these objects, they are very strange. And it doesn't mean that they have to be alien necessarily, but they are very strange. And it seems that there's something more going on than just narcotics, over the border narco trafficking. It would seem like that.
This is Dave Fouch's page, and he's done an analysis of even the jellyfish UAP recently. That Jeremy Corbell released. He did the La Bruja, the Apache. UAP, and
Mm-hmm.
he actually works with this technology, the same camera technology that you can find on these craft, and he does the tests with a balloon in infrared. You know, it's pretty cool. The depth of the analysis that he does. He shows even like what a jet, you know, if you look at here, um, that's, you know, when everybody says the Tic Tac should, um, you know, it, or Mick West says the Tic Tac is actually just the end of like basically the exhaust plume of some kind of fighter jet. This is what it should look like. You could see the whole fighter jet's outline in that FLIR, and you could see the you know, the exhaust coming out the back. So that's not, you know, that's not what the Tic Tac looks like. It looks like this oblong,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. Totally different.
right.
It's
So he
not a
flipped.
credible explanation by him.
Exactly. So Dave Fouch does things like tests that out with the actual technology that
Yeah,
we captured um, those UAP videos with in the past
it's
decade.
fascinating. Yeah.
Um,
So can I ask, I just want to jump to the USO theme here, which is what most of your work in this film is about. And we'll link to it below. And by the way, I think you said your film's available on Apple and where else?
Apple TV and Amazon Prime,
Yeah,
Vudu, Google Play, bunch of different platforms right now for stream.
I'll link it below so people can check it out. So, yeah, I thought it was very interesting because I mean, I'm in the home stretch of a very long, extended uh, book that I'm writing on USOs myself. And so for me, the timing was just very, very apropos that you're doing this as well. And we're like, oh wow, okay, USOs. For my research, I have amassed well over 600 specific USO cases that I've got individual entries for, and a lot of information on all of them. So it's been a pretty comprehensive project for me for these last 2 years. But you had stuff in there that I thought was really fresh and really powerful. Um, do you care to talk about any of the things that you feel, Darcy, were really intriguing for you? Information that came through that just made you say, "Wow," or is there anything else about this that you would like to share?
Absolutely. I mean, when I interviewed you in February of 2023, I was just kind of starting to hit the ground running with this project. I had written some stuff before that to sort of outline where I wanted to go with the story, but I never thought I was going to land an interview with retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who, you know, is pretty incredible figure. This guy served for the Navy for 32 years. 7 of those years, he was the chief oceanographer for the Navy, kind of planning out exercises based on the weather, the ocean conditions, so on and so forth. And when he hit the scene last year, actually on Matt Ford's Good Trouble show, I reached out to Matt. He said, you know, I can't like give you his number or anything, but if you want to have his email, feel free to reach out. And I reached out to him via email and just said, you know, here's my mission statement for this piece, and I would love to hear your testimony on certain things regarding the ocean. Because look, the ocean is really an unknown, and I've been involved with the ocean in some way my whole life. I've scuba dived since I was 15 years old. My dad's a master scuba diver. So that's just one thing that has always been an interest to me. But after speaking with Tim Gallaudet about our real knowledge of the ocean, it blew me away. I had no idea that we were in the dark about so many things of our own planet's ocean. I mean, behind your head there, Rich, um, you'll see the ocean covers more than 70% of.
Well, this is an artistic rendering, so as accurate. But yes, 70, I think it's 71% of Earth's
Yes.
surface is covered by water.
And of that percentage of ocean, less than 25% of the ocean bed is actually mapped with modern technology methods. So, we embarked on trying to map some of the ocean in the 1800s, in early Navy days of Britain and such, but it's just not up to a level where we really understand everything that's going on our own planet.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, we have all of these UAP encounters that have been happening over the ocean and sometimes in the ocean.
Yeah.
That's when they get designated a USO, unidentified submerged object. And I just find the testimony coming from Tim, where he even identifies things like the Catalina object, the Catalina island object, which is this structure off the coast there. I don't know if you saw, I actually sent you some links that can bring that up.
This is the one that actually was made publicized by Jimmy Church a number of years ago. Is that the same one? I thought I always had the impression that that was explained conventionally in some manner as a kind of a photographic artifact of the way Google puts their maps together. I didn't think that that was considered to be a genuine anomalous structure.
Right. But what happened was Tim reached out to NOAA in his search of what's going on there to see if it was an anomaly.
National Oceanographic something agency. I can't remember what the acronym is, but yeah.
Yeah. And when he reached out, he was told, this is actually a Twitter post, if you take a look here. He essentially found out from NOAA that there's aspects of this object that just do not seem natural. This is the original, and this is the full shot, which is also recorded on USGS data. So it's not just Google Earth. This is what Google Earth just applied to their mapping online. They wiped out the object in the past 10 days.
So it's no longer there. And I see Tim's comment, and Ross Coulthard jumps in as well, saying hilarious that some clown thinks that by deleting an image off Google Maps, they'll somehow deter public interest in that. So yeah, well said, Tim and Ross.
Yeah, and I can show like a little video too.
So what this did appear in the documentary, as I recall.
At the end, yeah.
So what's the deal with it? Is this some genuine anomaly, or is that what it looks like?
It seems like it could be a genuine anomaly, and I found it kind of odd that it was removed in the past 10 days. Like, why would you do something like that unless you were trying to actively cover up what was there, right?
Well, their explanation might be something like, look, we're just trying to prevent the flow of misinformation. This is the word they use all the time now. No more misinformation. Yeah, that's pretty interesting and flat, isn't it? That looks like like someone's dining room table there.
Interestingly, it has what almost look like columns underneath.
Yeah.
And then it just has like a unnatural structuring. It's got an opening through the front, and even around the back, it has like structuring that goes all the way around this circular shape. But again, if you go to Google Maps now, you can't capture this aspect at all. That's gone. It now looks completely different. So
interesting.
Yeah, I think that one of those things would just kind of like blew my mind because, the documentary came out and I put that in there because it was just an interesting little tidbit that Tim had taken an interest in it. And within 10 days of the documentary coming out, Google updated their maps to remove it. Is it a coincidence? I mean, I don't
Well, what's
I don't,
interesting is that, I mean, that image was out for almost a decade, and I'm sure many people watching this program have seen that. And there didn't seem to be any ongoing controversy about it until Admiral Tim actually decides to look into it himself. He is, as you mentioned, he was the Navy's #1 oceanographer for many years. That's his PhD. He's a brilliant man. And for him to be interested enough in that to inquire does say a little bit to me. That's an interesting little thing. You had another story that you got out of Tim Gallaudet relating to the destruction of or the removal of information from computer systems.
He was discussing his time being in service during the same time that Ryan Graves was flying his exercises off the coast of Virginia there. And
Talking 2014, 2015.
Yes, and when they would be encountering these UAPs. And Tim said that he got an email on the IPSEC server, which is a fully encrypted, secure email server, in which a video was attached. It was the video that is now called the GoFast UAP. And somebody that was higher in command made everybody on his team aware that this object is one of many that have been flying in this airspace over the ocean where they were doing their exercises for some time now. And they're worried about the safety of flight, which actually comes back to Ryan Graves and his whole, objective now is to create awareness of UAP and the safety of flight for pilots, both commercial and military alike. Yeah. And so he was saying how he had that email, he had that video, and he and people on his team were pretty astounded by it. And the first thing he thought was, okay, I've heard about these objects. This is not something that's part of our inventory that we know of. And he figured this must be extraterrestrial, non-human intelligence that's operating it, right? So that was pretty interesting. And then he also said the next day, this video was wiped from his email. Like it was taken out from even being sent, which you just have to remove it from the email server on the back end, and that will happen. But he found that kind of shocking too, right? Because somebody was trying to cover up tracks of that information coming out, and lo and behold, years later, post 2017, that video actually hit the public.
That's right. Yeah, it actually, I'll just throw this in here in my own research. On the subject of USOs, one account that I came across, and I'll just mention here, a number of the accounts that you get with this subject are written just privately by people, often many years after the fact, particularly Navy accounts. Anything that deals with the U.S. Navy, there's a lot of USO stories connected with the United States Navy for sure, and most of them, when I find them, it's usually some retired Navy person writing 10 or 20 or even more than 20 years after the fact. That's just how it is. So this is one that I recall reading, and the event took place, I think, in 2003 or 2004. It was in the early phases of the U.S. war on terror, as they like to call it. And this gentleman worked in an office in Washington, D.C. on a series of computers. He said these computers, they had a work computer and then each person had a more classified computer. This guy's office gave briefings to the president of the United States. So they were high-level people, these guys. And he said, one of his coworkers said, hey, come over here, take a look at this console. It was classified. And what they were tracking is an object that had come out of the Gulf of Mexico, out of the water. It had been seen by a U.S., I think, transport aircraft, maybe a C-135, I don't know, or some larger aircraft saw this object emerge from the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And then after an initial hovering, it zoomed to the north, going over the United States. And according to the guy who wrote about this, he said, yeah, our office, we tracked this going north. It actually went as far north almost as Chicago. So it went up the entire United States, over 1,000 miles, where it was last seen at South Bend, Indiana, which is right next to Chicago. And then somehow it just zoomed off, scrambled a bunch of Air Force interceptors, all of this stuff, a lot of mayhem going on. And he said, here's the kicker. In the aftermath, that entire event was scrubbed from our computers by the very next day. All of it was gone. And he said this had never happened before. It never happened after. And he said, for our office to have these scrubbed from us, we briefed the president, or our information, I think he said, went directly to the president of the United States. And he was shocked that anyone would have the authority to just remove that information off the computer system. So frankly, what Admiral Tim Gallaudet is saying, I found at least one corroboration from a similar period of time, about 10 years earlier. But this may very well be a longstanding policy.
And look, like quite recently, I don't know if you read the article or if not, but Matt Gaetz has been very interested in the UAP phenomenon, and he actually went to the Eglin Air Force Base recently to get briefed on the whole UAP incident that happened just last year, 2023, January of 2023. This object, 4 objects in a diamond-shaped formation, were intercepted by these fighter pilots, I think F-18s, over the Gulf of Mexico. So again, the Gulf of Mexico is this like very active area for UAPs. And there was a picture that was circulated, and this is an older article by News Nation from 2023, but Matt Gaetz has known about that encounter for a while now, and it was only just published in the debrief about a month ago about his going over there, seeing the photos and apparently video of this UAP encounter over the Gulf of New Mexico in January of 2023. And very fascinating that, this is something that's still happening over and over again. And I think we're going to hear about it more and more, just because our radar and our FLIR technology, all of these sensor technologies that we have on our state-of-the-art craft, even commercial pilots are becoming more and more aware of this phenomenon in the atmosphere or in our oceans. So I think it's just something that's going to be more and more reported to the public. And part of the mission statement for my documentary was to inform people about our oceans and what's been going on over them and inside of them. And hopefully Navy men, Air Force personnel, people that have witnessed this stuff will come forward and present more of their testimony. I think even this week, an individual, Frank Milburn, disclosed some UAP or UFO crash retrieval that happened in Britain, that he's not a primary source to it, but he was disclosing on behalf of a secondary of a primary source. And
that was in the late 1980s, I believe, is what I think he said on that. Is that right? I think late 80s.
Yeah, so I feel like
Very
people are becoming more courageous in terms of wanting to get this information out to the public like never before. And like you said in the documentary, people usually just want to do it under anonymity. But I think after that disgraceful Arrow report, people are getting a little bit aggravated and frustrated with the government and the DoD pushing back on disclosure.
Yeah, well, it's certainly pushing back on disclosure, a totally predictable outcome, um, in my view. The idea, though, that these objects are all over the world's bodies of water is something that you covered quite a bit in this film. Um, and we can mention, I mean, the fact that the Gulf of Mexico is a hotspot. Catalina Island, the Channel Islands off the coast of California, is definitely a hotspot. But in my opinion, the island where Andy was born is probably the biggest and most active USO hotspot maybe in the world, and that's Puerto Rico. When in my dive into this subject, I would say that area, the Caribbean in general, but Puerto Rico specifically, has, I think, the highest concentration of really, really good USO cases. By the way, another one that people don't think about is the whole northeastern U.S. Canadian corridor there. So going from New York, Boston, up like to Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, and all the way, including places like Shag Harbor, which of course is well known, but many, many, many others. But Puerto Rico is just, I think, if I were to vote, I would give that the #1 ranking as USO hotspot. And just before we began recording, we had a little chat about the Aguadilla. Andy, you were from Aguadilla, correct?
Yeah, born, raised,
Born
and all
Aguadilla, yeah. It's aside from living in the town that I grew up in, but that's a whole other thing, on Long Island. But Aguadilla is on the north western portion of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is like a big rectangle. It's about 100 miles wide, and it's very rectangular in shape, and it has basically 4 corners. Aguadilla is at the northwestern corner area there, and you live there. There's quite a few good USO cases that I found. The most famous one is the video from 2013 that also was subject to a lot of analysis. Do you know much about that one, Andy? I think you do.
Yeah, I definitely do that one.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I'm not sure if Darcy wants me to get too deep into it, because I know we're
You can
kind of
get into it for sure. I'll just full disclosure to Rich and people that might be watching this. We're actively investigating Puerto Rico right now for my next documentary.
There we go.
We've actually done some boots on the ground
Good.
recording and met with witnesses and spoken to a whistleblower on the ground there that was partially responsible for leaking that 2013 UAP video shot in Aguadilla by CBP, Customs Border Patrol, looking for narcos and stuff. So definitely mention whatever you want, Andy. I'm sure it'll be better covered in the documentary anyways.
I mean, definitely one of my favorite videos of all time. Even before, gained attention. When I first saw it, I was like, okay, this is absolutely incredible, because it's not just, a random civilian capture of an object in the sky. You got an actual legitimate military grade camera seeing an object in the air, flying, I mean, low between houses, right above the cars. I mean, it was very, very low to the ground, and then straight into the water at the same exact speed, did not, slow down or anything. And on top of that, going into the water, splits into 2 different objects that both go into different directions under the water and disappear. I mean, like, how can, the fact that people still attempted to debunk that is is unbelievable, because yeah, I mean, it's probably crazier to believe a balloon could do that than a UFO.
Well,
Or
these were
right?
non-credible types of explanations. I mean, I know people like Mick West said they were balloons, or I think someone mentioned Chinese lanterns and this type of.
Yeah.
To me, that just always struck me as nonsensical. The object was tracked by the Scientific Coalition of Ufology, who did a 160-page analysis of this, which I have a copy of.
250 plus that I saw.
All right. Well, I believe I read it, but I didn't think it was it's quite long. It's very detailed. And they were able to study the metadata on that as well. And they determined this thing was flying at minimum 85 miles per hour. You're not going to
Yeah,
get a
I think
balloon moving.
yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say at one point, I believe they said 100 up to 110 miles per hour
Okay,
as it
that was
entered.
top speed. So by the time it hit the water, it was in the high 80s or maybe close to 90 miles per hour. And when it was in the water, they tracked it doing almost exactly the same speed. So it did not slow down
Yeah.
in
And
water,
on top of that, duplicating, like kind of,
replicating it or
yeah.
splitting off into two. However, that, by the way, something that you see in UFO and UAP reports frequently enough, where objects will divide and then recombine. You ask, like, how is this possible? It doesn't make any sense in any physics class that I'm aware of. But yet, and we see it in this infrared. It's quite fascinating case.
It's almost like a high-tech version of deploying chaff out the back of a fighter jet or something. You know what I mean? Like to, I guess, throw off your tracker or throw off an attack, right? It's just a strange thing that I guess it's almost like showing that whatever this object was knew it was being tracked. So it divided itself to throw off
Oh,
the track.
that's interesting. I wonder. I don't know. I mean, the video kind of ends at around that point. It doesn't really continue, unfortunately. But what we have is definitely interesting.
We actually have the full video, the original source video. We got that here in Puerto Rico, and it does go on beyond that. In fact,
Oh, I don't think I've. Is that publicly available, or are you just holding?
No, we got the original source video.
Are you going to be able to display that in your next documentary that I'll probably have to
I
bring
am.
back on here again for that
I
one?
am.
And I'm sure
I
Andy
am.
will be there. All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, you're whetting our appetites for that one. But anyway, yeah, the Aguadilla case, that's a really, really, it's good that we have that one. And the video is a really high. We don't have that for this. I'm sorry, everyone, but we'll put a link for the Aguadilla video. You can watch it. It's pretty well known. I think a lot of folks have seen it by now.
My father actually had an incident. Not my father, but I remember years ago when I was still living in Puerto Rico, my father had came to me one day and told me a story of a friend of his who had we used to own a grocery store down in Puerto Rico in a small little section of Aguadilla, and he said a friend of his came in one day and he saw like there was something wrong with him, so he had asked him if everything was all right. So he said that basically he said something happened to him and his son the night before while they were fishing right off the coast. We lived near the water, not even 5 minutes away from the beach. And him and his son were night fishing. And I'm not sure if you've been to Puerto Rico, but they have those little wooden boats with the, single engine motor on it. And they went out in the middle of the night and it's pitch black in the ocean at night. Literally you can't see nothing, but whatever light is there in your possession is as far as you can see. And as they're fishing, what he told him was that the boat lit up underneath the water. A bright light shone underneath the water, right below the boat. And, of course, they were scared, confused as to what this was. And he claimed that the object moved to the side of the boat, exited the water, and hovered directly over them. And he mentioned how he could feel the water, dripping off the object. And I believe it was like a disc shaped object. They couldn't really see the detail of the actual physical object, just going based off of the light. And after that, just hauled ass back to shore from the fear. But it's
do you know what year that
not,
was? Can you tell me or tell people the year? Do you have any idea approximately when that happened?
That happened probably the early 90s, late 80s, I believe. Yeah.
It sounds like many, many accounts that I have found in researching this. So a lot of people fishing off a coast somewhere, and a light source below the water gets their attention. They're thinking, where did this come from? What is this? And the other thing that I've noticed is in many of these cases, especially the ones that happen at night, which is the majority that I have seen, it's very difficult to get sometimes the shape or the color of the craft. There's a lot of details that just end up missing for all kinds of reasons. It's frustrating it from a researcher point of view, but it's just how it is. But what you're describing, I can just say, like, I have come across many, many accounts that are very similar in many parts of the world where people will see the unknown source of light, an object will emerge from the water. Can only imagine how people react on seeing something like that, you know. And then
It's
with the
actually
water dripping
very common.
down as well,
Mhm.
like people will describe that, and then the thing just takes off and goes somewhere.
Those are very important little details. They might seem nonchalant, like, stupid little things to mention, but that's more information to let you know that something was there. Because if they're
Yeah.
describing water hitting them, then how else is water going to hit them if it's not raining or anything like that, and they're sitting in a boat and all of a sudden they see this? That means something was there.
No,
Something
those
legitimate.
types of details are important. I totally agree. In the collection that I'm putting together, I'm trying to um, make sure I have all of those types of additional details and all of the effects caused by these objects, so that because I think that's very important. In when someone says like the thing came out of the water and it nearly capsized my boat, that happened a couple of times. Or it was so intense I actually couldn't look at the light because it was so bright. It was brighter than daylight, things like that. There's all kinds of very interesting details that come up with these water-based cases, which for me, unlike both of you guys, I'm not really a water guy. Like I did grow up on Long Island. I grew up with the beach there, but it's really wasn't ever my thing. I'm a mediocre swimmer at best. But I developed an interest in this, and I can only imagine being out in the water at night, even a couple of miles off the shore, how utterly terrifying it would have to be to experience something like what you just described, Andy. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just in the oceans. You talking about other bodies of water in Puerto Rico, like small lakes, little
Mhm.
streams, rivers. They see things going through those and exiting and entering them all the time. All the time.
That's a really good point. And this is something that I've tried to differentiate in my book. Is it from the ocean? Is it from a lake, from a reservoir, from a river? There are lots of USO cases that are not necessarily from oceans, although I would say the majority are from an oceanic source one way or another. But you do get them from rivers and reservoirs and lakes and ponds, even very small. Some of them are very bizarre. But anyway, I don't want to talk about that's my research. I'm going to bring that out hopefully in the near future. One thing, Darcy, that I really was engaged in was your interview with Mark D'Antonio. I thought that was really interesting. Oh yeah, I thought your graphics were really good. I thought you had really cool graphics for this. People should check that out. The way you
Yeah.
kind of explain a lot of these cases.
Yeah, what I wanted to do in the documentary was not only cover like USO or UAP encounters in and over the oceans, but I wanted to highlight just what we know about the ocean and what kind of craft are in there. And Jim Goodall, uh, otherwise known as James Goodall, and Tim Gallaudet, and also Mark D'Antonio do a great job of illustrating the ocean, and
Mhm.
what Navy submariners do out there, what Navy submarines are capable of, what kind of craft we can take right to an abyss, to the bottom of an ocean trench, um, which is, not too many types of craft, and often they can get really badly damaged from the pressures of the water that deep. Um, and yeah, we just covered the different ocean volume zones right down to the Hadal zone, what kind of fish and sea life you can find. So yeah, it's really, the documentary is educational in other aspects other than just UAPs and USOs. And
Mhm.
I wanted to incorporate really like good quality animations to illustrate that, so people were, very aware of what's going on.
It was
And I think
important. It was very useful because it's really tough to get good photos or videos of genuine USOs. I mean, people really should understand this. It's very difficult. I know because I've looked, there's not a lot available. It's an ephemeral phenomenon. It's difficult to get good photograph and video. So a good recreation is quite valuable. And you did that a number of times. I thought it was really nicely done.
a lot of that photo and video evidence is locked away in classified
Yeah.
documentation, and so Bob McGuire, who I know he saw the trailer for my doc when Jim Goodall was discussing a Navy encounter. I think it was the SN 767, where somebody was along for the ride who's a scientist and witnessed a fast mover, a USO, zoom by at in excess of 600 miles per hour. And he wouldn't say the person's name. Right after that trailer was viewed by Bob, he reached out to me on social media and said, "Hey, that was actually me. If you ever want to hear the story." And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to. Thanks, Bob. Wow, that's so funny. What a small world." And he was basically stating that you've got these submariners that go on their very first ride on a submarine, and they witness a USO or a fast mover. And supposedly there's a program for cataloging these incidents that the XO and the sonar operators are aware of, and they go into a fast mover program that the Navy is secretly keeping that information away from the public. But another thing, just alluding to pictures and video where this stuff is classified, Bob mentioned that he actually saw that triangular object. He saw the actual photo that was circulating during the UAP task force days when the intelligence agencies were circulating this information of a supposed encounter where an F-18 fighter pilot was scrambled to the ocean and a black triangle came out of the ocean surface, flew by him, and then he saw from underneath, it had three circular lights at each corner of the black triangle, right? Yeah. And Bob was like, "I actually saw that photo," and I said, "Oh, can you send me it?" And he said, "Absolutely not. It's classified, and that could never be shown to the public." So
I just
it's
want to
like,
point out that that photo, I knew about that photo back in 2019 also. I've heard conversations. I talked with a different filmmaker, not yourself, who knew about it. And there were people should really know this was behind the scenes drama that was going on about 4 or 5 years ago. And I remember several phone calls learning about this photograph, a triangle, and it was supposed to be an amazing quality, ultra high res image of a triangular craft that had emerged from the ocean. So this is obviously the one. And I've never seen it either. But we know the rumor mill has buzzed about this for a long time. And it's very interesting that, discussion of this is continuing. I'm very interested in that. I'd love to see that picture because from everything that I was told, this photograph is powerful. It's very powerful.
It's a sequence of photographs too, isn't it?
That sounds right. Trying to recall.
Maybe. I don't know. But at least the eyewitness testimony was that they saw it coming out, going past them, and then it was above them and before it took off, right? So pretty powerful stuff. And it's just like, what, you had these Congress men and women going into a skiff recently. I don't know if you saw that news where they were coming out of this skiff being briefed on UFOs or UAPs in a classified setting, and the looks on their faces, like they were just, Luna came out of that, a whole bunch of guys, the Mike, I want to say, yeah, a whole bunch of them, and you can find this on YouTube, and they were just blown away. Were they seeing those photos? Were they seeing this stuff that's, obviously emanating or possibly having command and control of our ocean space?
Undoubtedly, a lot of these are from the U.S. Navy. And it's really, imagine being in the position of the Navy. One of the things that I was telling you for this documentary was how I've come across maybe about a dozen Navy cases, U.S. and Russian/Soviet Navy, not just American, in which these objects have shut major warships down, shut them down in the middle of the ocean, including shutting down communications, shutting down all significant electronics systems, shutting down weapon systems, and at times shutting the entire ship engine down so it's dead in the water. These have happened. If you're reading about this once or twice, maybe you could find a way to explain it away, but I've come across about a dozen of these cases. They have a very powerful consistency. So if you're the Navy and this is part of the situation, you're basically telling the world, we're not in control of our, billion-dollar warships that we use to project power throughout the world. There's something that can just turn them off like flipping a light switch. That is not something that's an easy discussion, I can imagine, to bring up to the rest of the world. I can't see any reason that they would want to divulge that to anyone. It's such a huge vulnerability that they have. And this Fast Walker program that you were just mentioning, I think that's quite significant too. I had not heard that elsewhere. Totally find that credible. And it's one of these things where, we want to get as much supporting data on it as possible, because my opinion is the Navy must have a kind of a fast mover, I said fast walker, fast mover program in place where they are tracking this phenomenon. And speaking of the submarines, would you mind just reporting Mark D'Antonio's submarine story? He's talked about this, obviously, and he's talked about it for your film. He told me this story once many years ago, and I know he's discussed it since then. He doesn't give exact dates or locations. He's very careful about that, but he was on a U.S. Nuclear submarine with the U.S. Navy on one occasion. Would you care to count that?
Absolutely. So what he told me was that on his very first trip on this nuclear submarine, invited as a guest, working on a classified project for the Navy. He was out at sea. He wasn't feeling very good. He was a bit seasick, getting used to being in the ocean and the movement of this, what he says, floating coffin.
That's right.
Yeah. But, they were picking up speed, and he was sitting in the sonar booth trying to relax and not puke. And he heard the sonar operator, while he was closing his eyes, kind of getting tired from this queasiness. Con sonar, fast mover. And when he opened his eyes, he thought, we're going to get hit by a torpedo. Because it was such a alarming, distressful message that was coming from the sonar operator. And that's when he really started paying attention. His seasickness went away. He started, being on high alert. And the XO walked over and said, "What do you got?" And the sonar operator said, "An object moving in excess of several hundred knots, sir." And the XO just said, okay, log it and dog it, meaning, catalog it. And he just sauntered on, and Mark jumped up and said, "Hey, sir, can I help in any way? What's going on with this object that's moved by?" And the XO just said to him, "D'Antonio, right?" And he said, "Yep." He said, "You enjoying your ride so far?" And he said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Good, let's keep it that way." And basically told them, sit down and shut up, because he didn't want to talk about it, right? That's, one way of saying this is not something we can talk about.
Absolutely.
So
thank you for that.
You know, years later, he ends up having dinner with, I guess, the second in command for the whole Navy. And he asked that top, official of the Navy, can you tell me about the fast mover program? And instead of the, um, individual saying, there is no fast mover program, or, what are you talking about? He said, sorry, Mark, I can't talk about that. So there seems to be something going on in terms of our Navy's categorizing this phenomenon and keeping it cataloged.
Yeah, I think there has to be no question about this. And whether we're really going to ever get to the bottom of this is a really big question, because it just seems to me it's one thing to talk about UAP disclosure in the generic sense of admitting that there may be some things out there that we can't explain. But when you get really into the weeds on this, when you start dealing with the specific cases, whether they're water-based or atmospheric-based or whatever, you very quickly see this is a very uncomfortable subject for the military. Understandably, I'm not, it's not difficult to see why they don't want to get into this, because they are clearly dealing with something that is operating well beyond their capabilities, and they don't like that. And why should they like that? It's not an easy place for them to be. And I'm sure they don't know what to do about it. Because if you admit this as a problem, then presumably you're going to be expected to have to do something about it. And what can they really do? Bring this to the public attention and be utterly helpless in the face of it. I'm sure they don't want to be in that kind of a position. I think you've done a real service with this film, Darcy. And I hope that people do get to take the time to check it out. I will have the links for it below, Apple and Amazon and anywhere else you've got it. We'll make sure we link to it. And Andy,
Thank you very much.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Andy, I actually really enjoyed meeting you for the first time here in this context. I feel like we're family now, so on many levels. I mean, not just from growing up in the same town, but you release an important videos to the world, and you promptly get Rotten Tomatoes thrown at you from different segments of what's supposed to be the UFO community, where we're supposed to support each other, and frequently it's anything but that, unfortunately. And
yeah,
experience that firsthand. Sorry that you did, but we're glad you're here.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It was
Glad you're
good
here.
to be on.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having us on. People have any stories about Puerto Rico USOs or UAPs after watching this important interview, please reach out to myself or Andy. He's NYUAP discussion on Instagram. And my email is media@occultjourneys.com. Please
link those. I'll put those below. People can click those if that's okay with you as well, Andy.
Totally.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, good. We'll put that in there.
Awesome.
Well, wonderful, guys. It was a real pleasure. I'm glad we got to have this chat. There's always more to talk about, and maybe we can do that as well in the future. I think it'd be great.
Very cool, man. Thank you.
Thanks very much. If you listeners enjoyed watching this, by all means, hit the like button, get notifications, ring the bell, so that you catch my programs in the future. I do a lot of work over at richardolenmembers.com. That's my personal website. By all means, do check that out if you're interested in the work that I do. And that is it. I want to thank all of you for being here with us here on the Richard Dolan Show. I will be back again in the near future. In the meantime, everyone, let's keep fighting the good fight. Later.